Hello, intrepid AP Biology students, and welcome. So we have now finished Unit 7 out of 8 units in AP Bio. And so with the AP test being a month away, we thought this would be a great time to kind of pause and take a look at that exam and start to think about how to begin preparing for it. So, all year long, we have been telling you that the test would be 60 multiple choice questions and 6 free response questions, and that each of those two parts would be half of your total score. Turns out we've been lying to you all year long, and that's not how it will be at all. In our defense, we didn't know we were lying to you. Um, so what are we going to see on this test? Well, here is the exam structure, Pandemic Edition. It is going to be on May 18th at 1 p.m. That is a week later than it was initially scheduled. And so make sure you mark your calendar and plan to log in 30 minutes early. I think they're trying to make sure that there's no hiccups. So um, mark your calendar, be ready to go. It is only going to be 45 minutes long. It is only going to be 2 essays or free response questions, and it is only on units 1 through 6. And we'll remind you what those units were in a moment. It is also open book and open note, but we are going to advise that you ignore that and just plan on it being not, because the reality is anything that could easily be looked up is not going to be on that exam. They've kind of pulled all those really easy, simple kind of memory things off. And time that you're spending looking things up is time you're not writing. And given the time limitations, you're going to need to write the whole time. So I guess I would kind of, I think they're doing that just because they know they can't stop you. But I don't think it's going to help much. So I guess I wouldn't put too much stock in that. The other thing is they are going to be monitoring this for cheating. They've said they've got a number of techniques and tools, plagiarism software, etc., to kind of monitor for cheating and things like that. And so we are going to expect you to represent Edina Public Schools well and be the honorable children that you are. So no funny business. You guys have worked hard all year. You're prepared for this, and you can do well. You do not need to cheat on this. So don't even think about it, or we will be very disappointed. Don't disappoint your teachers. Okay, so here is what they released about the new exam structure. 2 questions. The first question, you will have 25 minutes um, to write. It will count as 65% of your total score for this modified exam. Um, the question is going to be on interpreting and evaluating experimental results. And note, they even go into this much description. It presents you with an authentic scenario accompanied by data in a table and or graph. And you must, part A, describe and explain concepts, processes, or models in the applied context. Part B, identify and justify experimental design procedures. Part C, analyze data. And part D, make and justify predictions. So you've been doing these kinds of things all year, and it's kind of nice that they spell it out so clearly. This is equivalent to FRQ, you can't see it right now, but FRQ number 1, and we'll kind of talk about that in a moment later on in this. But it's basically, this would have been the first of 6 questions on the original exam. Question 2 is a little bit shorter. You only get 15 minutes. It will be counted as 35% of your total score. The question name is conceptual analysis. This question will present you with an authentic scenario describing a biological phenomenon with a disruption. The question will assess your ability to do the following. Part A, describe biological processes in an applied context. Part B, explain biological concepts or processes in an applied context. That's kind of the same. Oh, describe and then explain. It's not the same. Part C, predict the causes or effects of a change in a biological system. And then part D, support or justify a claim with reasoning or evidence. And that's the equivalent of FRQ 4. So this would have been question number 4 on the original exam. So pretty clear cut, which is nice, what they're going to ask you to do. Again, the exam date, May 18th. We are Central Time, 1 p.m. And then you'll have 25 minutes for question 1, 5 minutes to upload your response, and then 15 minutes to respond to question 2, 5 minutes to upload, and then you can't go back to your original question. So that's the official stuff that we have been given so far. So, in terms of content, what are the units that we have done? Well, here they are. They're listed here. They're also the major folders on the Schoology page, and we'll just kind of remind you. So, Unit 1 is the chemistry of life. We reviewed chemistry, we looked at macromolecules, carbs, lipids, proteins, nucleic acids. If you click this link, it will take you to the detailed and specific information from the College Board about what that unit should have entailed, but we assure you we did go over that information, so you should be prepared. Same with all these links. So Unit 2 was cell structure and function, so we looked at cells, cell membranes, and membrane transport. Unit 3 was cellular energetics. So energy and enzymes. Can a reaction occur? Delta G. Will a reaction occur? Activation energy. Um, energy and heterotrophs, which was cellular respiration and then fermentation. Energy and autotrophs, which was photosynthesis, including the light dependent and light independent reactions. Unit 4 was cell communication and the cell cycle. Cell communication included homeostasis, the positive versus negative feedback, and then cell signaling with those steroid hormones that interacted with DNA as transcription factors, and the water-soluble hormones, which worked through those cell signaling pathways with second messengers and all that goodness. Cell cycle is, basically interphase, mitosis, cytokinesis, and then don't forget about that regulation piece. Heredity was next. We looked at Mendel and his laws and all the different patterns of inheritance that came out of those Punnett squares. Meiosis as a source of genetic diversity, and then and a source of mutation as well because of errors. And then the chromosomal base of inheritance, which included sex-linked traits and autosomal linkage. And then finally, gene expression regulation, which included DNA structure and replication, and then protein synthesis. And then that was kind of our part one of this section, because it's kind of a big section. And then part two of this section included regulation of gene expression, focusing on operons and prokaryotes, and then the much broader array of techniques in eukaryotes. We touched on embryonic development in there as an application of this, the genetics of viruses and bacteria, and then DNA technology. Note that this 12 to 16% includes parts 1 and 2. So it was a longer chunk of our course because there's just a lot there, but all that information is only 12 to 16% of the exam. Unit 7 will not be on the AP exam, but those are the topics that we covered anyway, and Unit 8 will not be on the AP exam, but these are the topics we're going to cover. And by the way, you may be wondering, well, why are we doing these if it's not on the AP exam? College Board has been fairly clear that they would like us, if we have the capability, to continue to teach these topics because colleges are expecting you to learn them, and frankly, they're very fundamental to biology. It grieves me a bit to think that evolution and ecology would just be cut, but I understand why they had to make that decision. And then again, for detailed information on what they call the essential knowledge, what you should know, and the learning objectives, what you should be able to do, click on those links on the preceding slides. Now, interwoven through all of this are the science practices. You have been developing these skills all year long, and a lot of the AP exam questions require to use those. And so I'm going to give you a list of those practices in a moment. And then don't forget that mathematical skills are also assessed on here, and you've got that formula and equation sheet, and you'll be able to use that on the exam. Anything on there is fair game, and you should be able to use those with the exception of the evolution and ecology stuff. So I think for ecology, there's something called a Simpson's index, which you can ignore. There's some things on population growth that you can ignore. And then there's the Hardy-Weinberg stuff, which you can ignore. And it breaks my heart again that we're ignoring all that. So here are these science practices. We haven't really talked about these very much, but if you go through and read these, and I'll let you kind of read through them, I hope you'll recognize that we've been doing this. We've been explaining biological concepts and processes and models. In some cases, you've had physical models to manipulate, and in other cases, pictures and diagrams, pogles. We've been representing things visually for sure. If you look at this, this is basically the whole lab procedure that we've been doing for a lot of our labs. representing and describing data, so graphing, data tables. The statistics that we've been doing is Science Practice 5, and then just argumentation, just making a claim, supporting it with evidence and things like that. So we haven't made a big deal about naming these, but we've been weaving them in throughout the course. And I think as you go through this list, you'll say, oh yeah, we've been doing that and building those skills. Um, You've engaged in these science practices through POGIL activities, case studies, application-based questions on homework packets and tests, those practice AP essay questions, practice AP multiple choice questions, and the lab work. All of that stuff has been emphasizing these science practices. Speaking of lab work, if you've been curious about what labs we've done, there's no specific labs that we're supposed to do for the AP test, but they certainly do. They will give you experiments. And so if you want, I'll just kind of let you click through these slides. Here's just a quick reminder of the different labs that we have done, some of the more major ones that appear in their recommended list. And so you can just kind of refresh yourself on these because for certain these concepts will appear. This one we didn't actually do because of not having school. And then this one, sadly, we won't be doing either. We get to play with fruit flies that are kind of fun. This one we will do in ecology as kind of a paper pencil thing, but again, it won't be on the test. In terms of how these science practices are assessed, this is a link that I think is worth checking out. It's on Schoology, and if you scroll to the end of this document, it actually tells you, oh, here they are. Here are the 6 science practices, and here's how they're assessed. Now, I mentioned earlier that the test this year is going to be focused on free response questions 1 and 4. And so you can see anytime you see free response question 1, well, that means this science practice will be there. So 1 and 4 are here, concept explanation, that's something you probably want to pay attention to. Here's number 1 again for questions and methods, so that's one you want to pay attention to. Free response 1, again, and then here's free response 4, argumentation. So you kind of want to look at that and you can get a sense for how they're actually going to assess those. Again, 1 and 4 are going to be assessed. And then if you scroll down even more, the free response question, again, this is that information I showed you earlier. Free response question 1, here's what they're going to have you do. Free response question 4, here's what they're going to have you do. So they're very specific about what they want to do. The last thing is, if you're wondering, well, what's the difference between describe and explain? Here's the verbiage, right? So describe, provide relevant characteristics of a specific topic. Explain, that's too long to read, but you can read that. So if you're curious about the different verbs that they're going to ask you to use, here they are in very explicit terms. So again, 1 and 4 are the 2 FRQs that you want to pay attention to. Finally, some review resources. College Board has put together a number of screencast review sessions. These are good. I watched one, I'll be honest, I hit 2x on it, but they start with evolution, but now they're starting to loop back to earlier topics. There's practice essays. They go over the review and the answer key to those. They kind of tie it into like, here's what the exam is getting at. They're good stuff. So certainly something to do. And then there is a multiple choice practice exam, and this is actually going to be an assignment, and we'll post in Schoology the details of that. But we are going to have you do the 2013 exam, at least part of it. And certainly for the multiple choice section, I really recommend that you print that out. And if you do, be careful not to just click print for the whole thing. There's a lot of junk before and after the core of the exam, so definitely choose certain pages. There's also a folder in Schoology preparing for the AP test with a number of resources, links to Bozeman science videos, which are very good, links to just some notes that other teachers have put together and summaries. So there's a lot of resources. So really at this point, it's time to probably start to cycle back to those early units and start to figure out what are my strengths, what are my weaknesses, what areas do I need to work on. This practice exam will kind of give you some tools to help figure out, get a rough idea, where am I strong, where am I weak, and then start to seek out resources. So there's everything we've ever done is on Schoology. There's practice, there's review videos like crazy out there that you can access. And then, of course, we'll be around to help. And sprinkled throughout our ecology unit will also be doing some review as well. So we will get you ready, children. But that's kind of a quick once over of what to expect. Thanks.